Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Crimson and in this video we are going to be continuing our look through of the Elden Ring official artbook. In part 1 we covered the armor sets and some of the NPCs that we come across in the game, but in this episode we are going to be actually reading the book, going through the book in order and looking at the environmental art for all of the different locations in Elden Ring. So just before we get started, because I want to keep this intro quick, just in case you have not seen part 1, this book is in Japanese, so I am unable to read any of the text that may pop up. There's not that much text, but if there is text and I just gloss over it, it's just because I couldn't get my hands on an English copy for under €500, so I just decided to get the Japanese version, which was either 70 or €80. So just wanted to get that out of the way, just so you guys know why I'm not reading the text. But with that out of the way, let's just dive straight into things. So first off, we have this amazing sleeve that comes with it. So let's just take this off. And then we just have the standard Elden Ring Volume 1. And I should just quickly show you guys, this is a thick art book. Like, this is massive. And the second volume is about the same size. So this is going to be a long series. I'm going to be doing part 1 as its own series and then part 2 as its own series as well, instead of doing one continuous thing, because I don't want to end up doing like Elden Ring art book, part 8 or anything like that. So with that out of the way, let's just dive right in. So we start off with the same picture that we saw on the sleeve. And we have this great introduction picture to the lands between, with the Erd Tree front and center. This is it right here. If any of you have read Berserk, and yes, we are only 3 minutes into a Crimson Artbook video before I bring up Berserk, but the Erd Tree is extremely similar to the World Tree in Berserk, and since Miyazaki is a massive Berserk fan and draws a lot of inspiration from it, it's almost confirmed that that is the inspiration for the design of the Erd Tree. Not the lore, but just for the design of it. So next, this is our table of contents. However, I do not know what any of these chapters actually say. What I can say is we have gallery illustrations, and then concept art, and then characters, tarnished, and others. So that's what we're going to be looking at in Volume 1. Basically landscapes, concept arts and stuff, and then the characters. So here is the first chapter, gallery illustrations. So we start off with this picture of Marika. As you can see, she has been strung up. This is how we find her. And I just want to say this now before we really get into it. If you have not played Elden Ring, I would strongly recommend not watching this video until you have played Elden Ring, because I am going to do my absolute best not to spoil things for the game in this, but at the same time, for an art book that has 2 volumes, I feel like it's going to be impossible to avoid all spoilers. So if you have not played Elden Ring and think you might like to, I would recommend playing Elden Ring through and then coming back to this video. With that out of the way, let us just keep on going. So here are a couple of pictures that we see from the introduction cinematic to the game. Let me just zoom out a little bit. There we go. So we see on the left here, we have Marika trying to smash the Elden Ring, and then Radagon trying to fix the Elden Ring. The dual similarities between the two is interesting because both of them are wielding a hammer, and a hammer is a tool that, you know, can be used to fix something or can be used to smash something. So, especially before the big revelation near the end of the game, you're not really sure what's actually going on in this cutscene. You know, are they smashing it? Are they fixing it? What's going on? And there's a very, very subtle change between the two. So first off, on the Marika side, we can see that she has a more slender body with blonde hair. And then on the Radagon side, we see the more bulkier man frame with the red hair. And funny enough, this was actually shown in the very first Elden Ring trailer. You see both Marika and Radagon smashing the Elden Ring, but it's cut in such a way that it brings zero attention to it, and it basically went over everyone's head, or at least it went over my head. But then looking back, it's so obvious, and it just brings to the genius. So next we have another picture of a landscape. We can see the Erd Tree. The Erd Tree is an ever-prevalent piece of scenery in Elden Ring. You can see it from essentially every single location. And as you get closer to the Erd Tree capital, the tree gets bigger. So this is a picture depicting the Night of the Black Knives, in which a rune of death was stolen and used by the Black Knife assassins to slay Godwyn the Golden of the Golden lineage. So we can see 1, 2, 3 Black Knife assassins. So in this image, we can see 1, 2, 3 Black Knife assassins who are all women, and they are stabbing Godwyn the Golden with a dagger infused with the rune of death, marking the first ever demigod murdered. So, very, very pivotal moment. I think these are all pictures of the introduction cinematic. Here's Luna Princess Ranni with her back turned. You can see her with her hat and surrounded in darkness, very fitting for Ranni. So this picture showcases Margit the Fell Omen killing Tarnished. So this is obviously a fallen Tarnished here. There's some more soldiers around him. I can't tell if these are soldiers that are loyal to him or if they are kind of the next challenger up, for want of a better term. But I'm assuming this is taking place at the very entrance of Stormvale Castle, where we first meet Margit. Next, we have yet another picture of Marika. We see her here. Not looking so good, honestly, but, you know, after shattering the Elden Ring and being imprisoned inside a tree, I probably wouldn't look so good either. Then we have this picture, which is one of my favorites in all of Elden Ring. So this is Praetor Rykard as he has begun being devoured by the serpent. You can see that the serpent in this picture is still actually quite very and has not fully consumed Rykard yet, but is in the process of it. And Rykard did this willingly, so it's not like this is something that he didn't want to happen. He wanted to be devoured by the snake. We have a beautiful double spread of a battle in Caelid, one of the major battles of the Shattering, and this is the final confrontation between Malenia the Severed and Radahn the Star Scourge. and the battle ends in a draw with Melania infecting Radahn with the Scarlet Rot by activating her bloom, but in the process she is she is rendered unconscious. And fun little lore fact, there is a Clean Rot knight, just one, who carried Melania as she was unconscious all the way from the battle where we fight Radahn to the Halig tree, which must have been a horrific journey, but he succeeded and he got his leader back to safety. So probably one of the most unsung heroes in all of Elden Ring, if you ask me. Here are some more pictures that we see of the battle. So we see Melania kind of having fallen here with Radahn standing over her. You can see the size of his sword. And then Radahn over here, just again towering over her. Radahn was always a big lad, and the Scarlet Rot just made him bigger, but this is him pre-Scarlet Rot. And despite Melania in this instance having yet to bloom and infect Caelid still kind of looks like a hellscape, so I'm assuming that it just always looked like this and Melania made it worse. So next is this page, and I'm gonna be honest, I actually can't really tell or make out what exactly this is. It looks like this is Horaloo, just based on the size of the man here and his haircut. But I might be wrong about that. I just genuinely cannot make this page out. So again, if I am wrong, please correct me in the comments. Then here we have a picture of a map. Here we have Fia, the bedside companion. We will get more into her once we get to the character section. And then here we have the loathsome dung eater being hung. So it makes sense why he's being hung. I mean, that's a little bit too merciful for this guy, if you ask me. But, you know, at least it quote-unquote stopped him. For a while, at least, that is. Next, we have Sir Gideon Ofnir, the All-Knowing, or as the Albinonics call him, the All-Hearing Brute. So Gideon is someone who constantly provides us with advice throughout the game, kind of telling us where to go and stuff, but is also secretly spying on us and trying to become Elden Lord also, but by much more ruthless means. So while he appears to be friendly, or not friendly, but helpful and, you know, being of assistance, he is scheming to undermine you at every single turn. His helmet, though, is pretty cool, I have to be honest. And then this is the cover art for Elden Ring. So we have the Elden Ring in the back here, and we have Lord Vike down here. Not a lot of people actually know that this is Vike on the cover, which makes sense because before us, he was the closest person who ever, or the closest tarnished to ever become Elden Lord. However, in the end, he failed because he fell to frenzy. Next, we have a couple different characters. So depicted here on the left, we have Lord Vike as he is being consumed by the flame of frenzy. I don't know if you can make it out in this picture, but the side of his helmet is all seared and covered in fingerprints from him being embraced by the 3 fingers. And then over here, we have White Mask Vare, who is a servant of Mohg, the Lord of Blood. Vare is one of, if not the first character that we meet. He is the guy that has spawned the "I see you are maidenless" meme. and really cool character. His quest line is very good. He's basically the guy to pursue the quest to get invasions and stuff. Really good character. Next, we have Godfrey here, and his lion Sirash on his back. So Horalu and Godfrey are the same person. Horalu was his given name back when he was a chieftain in the Badlands. However, when he married Marika, he changed his name to Godfrey, and the lion Sirash was placed on his back to constantly kind of satiate his lust for battle, because that is what he lived for. And you can see he has this massive axe here, which is so cool. And then here we have the Wolf Knight armor. This is the armor set that was used in all of the trailers. So as far as From Software trailer armor goes, by trailer armor, I mean like the armor that each game kind of showcases. So for example, Dark Souls 1 had the Elite Knight set, Dark Souls 2 had the Farum set, and so on. But the Wolf Knight set is what the tarnished armor always looked like in the trailers, and is a fairly good looking set. Next up, we have the different starting classes of Elden Ring. So these are the starting classes that we get to choose from when we begin our journey into Elden Ring. So at the start here, we have the Vagabond, who is your typical knight character, you know, decently heavy armor, a long sword, a shield, all that fun stuff. Then next is the hero. The hero does not have a shield, but has a axe with a Rage Ash of War on it, which kind of gives the weapon a little bit of a buff. Next, we have the warrior. The warrior is kind of similar to the vagabond, but at the same time, very, very different. The warrior has lighter armor, a faster sword, and no shield, if I remember correctly. But still an amazing choice if you like melee combat. Next, we have the samurai. This one is fairly straightforward. It is just a samurai. He has standard samurai armor and starting off with a katana. Really good class if you were into dex builds. Next, we have the bandit or the thief. I don't know which is the official term, but they start off with very light armor, a kind of half face mask implying that they are indeed a criminal, and a dagger. So while he might seem to be the weakest of the bunch so far, the dagger is actually very powerful because you can attack very fast with it, and especially if you infuse it with bleed. Next, we have the confessor, who is kind of a mixture between a melee and a magic-based character, which I really like. I am personally not a fan of sorceries in From Software games, but I do appreciate that there is a character that tries to bridge the gap a little bit, so that a new player can try out both styles at the beginning to find out what they actually enjoy playing as. Next up, we have the prisoner. So the prisoner starts off with just kind of tattered clothing. Obviously, they were an escaped prisoner. He has this very round helmet with one eye shot on the helmet. Again, second Berserk reference this video, but very similar to Griffith's helmet as he is being tortured in Berserk. Then next we have the astrologer. So the astrologer is our main sorcery class. There's a bunch of different types of magics in Elden Ring, but the main two are sorceries and incantations. So the astrologer is for sorceries. And then next we have the prophet, which is another magic-based starting class, but this one using faith. I'm not going to get too much into the differences between sorceries and incantations just yet, but we will get there at some point. And lastly, we have the Wretch. It would not be a From Software game if you could not start the game off with absolutely nothing but your underwear and no weapon, no shield, no anything. Personally, when I started my playthrough of Elden Ring, I went with the Vagabond just because that's how I prefer to play, but I eventually made my character into a half knight, half faith build, or a strength faith build, which is just how I prefer to play these games. What is great about this character selection, and really all character selections in From Software games, is that there isn't a bad one. Each of them have their ups and downs, but there is not one that is objectively worse than the other, which is really good. Maybe the deprived, but not really. It's truly whatever playstyle you would like to try first, or want to devote a build from the very start, you have all your options available to you. And the next chapter is the concept art of the lands between, and we see this incredible shot of a beautiful landscape. So let's just break down what we see here. So first off, there's some mountains in the background. There is this castle on a hill. I'm assuming this is Stormvale Castle, but I could be mistaken. It could be the castle in Castle Morn or any other castle, but I'm placing my bets on this being Stormvale. And then we see our Tarnished down here, riding Torrent. Torrent is our spectral steed given to us by a character which we will get to shortly. But yeah, he is what allows us to fast travel much easier. Okay, so here we have our Tarnished resting at a site of grace. Tarnished is sitting here. It's kind of hard to make out just because it is very dark. Next, we have a picture of the table in the round table hold. I really like the look of this table, especially with all the swords and stuff coming out of it. The round table hold is one of my favorite From Software hubs, but personally, nothing beats the Dark Souls 3 Firelink Shrine, in my opinion. But the round table hold is still an incredible place. Okay, let's move on. So next we have this page on the left of a kind of plateau area, and this looks like one of the first churches that we meet Kale in right at the start of the game. And here is Tarnished there. I'll zoom in a little bit just so you guys can see. That's him right there. Pretty cool. I really like Kale as a character. It's a shame that his plot or quest got cut from the game, but yeah, I really like him quite a bit. Here are some more areas at the start of the game in Limgrave. So here we can see some of the broken architecture littering the ground, especially. This looks like the swamp or the lake where we fight Agheel the dragon. And then here we have yet another church. The churches are always a welcome sight because one, there's a grace, and there's usually some kind of item in there, whether it is the physic or some other very useful item, especially very on in the game. Next we have this double spread of our Tarnished here, making his way towards this castle fortification. I can't actually tell exactly where this is, but it looks like this is the first gate that we enter on the path to Stormvale. However, I could be wrong about that, because at the same time, it kind of looks like Castle Morn to me. but I think that's actually Stormvale up there, but I can't tell. Next, we have the bridge leading from Limgrave to the Weeping Peninsula. So Limgrave is the starting area in Elden Ring, and the Weeping Peninsula is to the south. It's actually a great kind of starter area. That's personally where I started my game. But the bridge is littered with fortifications and soldiers of Godric. You can see that there's two people hanging here, so obviously the soldiers trying to defend this place are trying to send a message to keep people out. Next is on the road to Stormvale Castle. So this is the arena in which we fight Margit for the first time. This is actually it here, and then the far gate would be there once we defeat Margit. Margit is the first main boss of Elden Ring, and for a lot of people was the first wall. I know so many people who quit the game just after getting to Margit, which is crazy to me. For me, it actually took me about 15 hours until I got to Margit because I was just running around exploring. Open world games kind of make me feel overwhelmed at times, so I just kept getting sidetracked and sidetracked over and over. So this is after we defeat Margit and we make our way up to the front gate of Stormvale, and as you can see, the gate is closed like when we first arrive, and we have to sneak around the side. We can speak to the NPC Vostok, who tells us that there is a hole that we can sneak through, or that he can signal and open the gate. Opening the gate is essentially certain death because you'll be shot by about 50 arrows, but it is nice that they give you the option, and unfortunately for poor Vostok, he is the most suspicious looking individual in all of the lands between, so it was a surprise for me when his advice actually worked. Next we have some more of the interior of Stormvale Castle, some of the trees, and then over here are some of the fortifications that Godric soldiers have constructed. So we have a wooden barricade, we have a ballista, and I believe this is a mounted, I don't know what the actual term is, but it's essentially a flamethrower. Really good, and all of these are placed in the same places, so trying to get through them are difficult to say the least. Next, this is on top of Stormvale Castle. This is after we get to the first site of grace and we proceed on this bridge, or this little kind of walkway on the castle wall. Tarnished is here, and you can see one of the hawks here. I absolutely hate these enemies because of the massive blades that they have on their talons. They absolutely halted my progress more than the Banished Knights did, which is crazy, just saying that out loud. Okay, moving on. Okay, so next, this is some of the interior of Stormvale Castle. You can see that it's a bit grimy, it's not in the best of conditions. Godric obviously hasn't been super concerned with maintenance, but yeah, there's a load of stuff just cluttering up the environment, which I personally enjoy. It makes the castle seem lived in. Then under here is yet another part of the interior of Stormvale. You can see that someone is cooking a meal. So here is another large open area inside the castle. As you can see, it is extremely dark, and it kind of looks like this maybe was a banquet hall. I'm not sure, but this might actually be the same room that we fight the grafted scion for the second time. However, I can't remember which exact room we actually fought that guy in. So this is some more of the interior of the castle. However, this is a little bit higher up in the castle. So it's a bit fancier. As you can see, there's nicer chairs, there's shields on the wall, there's candles burning, there's paintings and everything. So yeah, so this is obviously where the nobles or the knights would eat rather than the peasants. And then here we have some really cool stuff. So this is some of the banners that we find in Stormvale. So this is some of them here that we find. We find them all throughout the castle, on poles hanging from battlements and all that cool stuff, as well as some images of the castle itself and some of the hawks that inhabit it. I really like this banner. It's very simple, but it's cool. It reminds me a lot of the Lannister banner from A Song of Ice and Fire. But that's just me, maybe. So here is the arena in which we fight Godric. Godric is our first demigod that we can slay. That is, if you choose to stay on the kind of intended path. It is completely possible to avoid Godric and Stormvale entirely, but personally I killed Godric first as my first demigod. You can see that there is a dead dragon here, which Godric is using in the process of grafting. And speaking of Godric, he is very, very weak. Not in terms, yeah, both in terms of gameplay and also in terms of lore. He is the runt of the litter, so to speak, of the golden lineage, if he even is actually part of the golden lineage. Here's another picture of the same environment. This is a little bit closer to the exit, so this is obviously after we have killed Godric. After you kill Godric, if you warp somewhere else and then warp back to the grace that appears here after defeating him, you can see Gostock, the guy from earlier, stomping on his head. So obviously that just shows what he thinks of him. Now, Gostock is actually essential for a quest later on. Well, he's not essential to it, but by doing the quest, you unlock him as a vendor, and you can buy a crafting item, which lets you get a plus 25 weapon. However, I did not do this because on my first playthrough, when I teleported back here and saw Gostock, I just killed him because I didn't like the guy. So this is a room that we can enter in Stormvale Castle. After defeating Godric, you can see that there is a massive statue here, and our Tarnished is here. It's very difficult to actually find the Tarnished in all these pictures. It's kind of like the Elden Ring version of Where's Waldo. But yeah, it's a really cool room. So this is some more images here on the left page of Stormvale Castle. So we see some of the exterior. If we had ignored Gostock and instead decided to run through the castle grounds fully, this is what we would be greeted with. Wooden barricades, with soldiers with flaming crossbows and ballistas and everything. Not very fun. And then on this page, we have our Tarnished looking down into some crevasse with a bunch of pillars jutting out, which we use as steps in the game. Also, I should probably just say this now. I should have said it at the beginning. Any anecdotes that I make about my experience in Elden Ring, I'm referring to my first playthrough, just to kind of give you guys my experience of what it was like for me the first time doing and seeing all these things. So this is what appears to be some kind of cavern or cave. I'm assuming this is what our Tarnished was descending into in this picture. But as you can see, it's very dark, it's very gloomy. I can even barely see what's going on here, but there's a bunch of statues littered around the place. And then here we have another picture, so this is definitely a catacomb with the torches on the walls and everything. yeah, really cool. I know a lot of people aren't fans of the catacombs and stuff. I actually don't mind them. I personally find that the loot at the end is worth it, even if it's just for the lower implications. However, the amount of times I've done a cave or a catacomb only to get a sorcery is mental. So this is the very start of the game. So this is after we create our character, we come out into this courtyard and we fight the grafted scion. And this is a fight that you are obviously meant to lose, but if you don't, you kill the grafted scion, you get his weapon, and then you just have to walk off a cliff instead of being thrown off the cliff. Really cool. It's nice to see it lit up. You are able to revisit this area later on in the game, but I believe when you first enter this area, it is night time, and our tarnished is here. Okay, so it looks like we're moving into our next area now, which is Lionia, one of my favorite areas in the entire game. So we have this amazing double spread of a giant building, and I believe this is meant to be Rea Lucaria, the college of the mages and sorcerers. I really like the mist in all these pictures. It's very similar to how it is in the game. It's very misty, damp, rainy. Feels right at home for me, but yeah. So this is our tarnished crossing one of the great bridges to get to the gateway to enter the academy. However, this is the tower here, and this is our tarnished here. What I do like about actually having the tarnished in a lot of these photos is you get a sense of scale of the rest of the buildings and stuff that are in the picture as well. So this is us after we have come to the gates and we find it sealed with a magical seal that can only be opened by a key, and the key cannot have been previously used, so you can't steal one. You have to have acquired one, and you can barely make out our tarnished right there. So here is a double spread of our tarnished in Lionia. Here's our tarnished here, and he is making his way over to Carrier Manor, which is up on this hill here. The castle looks really, really nice in this picture. It's nice and sunny and bright, and just makes the castle look even more beautiful than it is in the game. So here is a double spread of inside of Carrier Manor. It's very dark, so you might not be able to make out what it is. I'll do my best to help with the glare, but even still, it is quite dark. But it's a double-story room with a lot of stuff like fancy furniture, guardrails, candles, all the stuff that you would expect in a medieval castle of a royal family. Next, we have just some images of some of the things that we find in Rea Lucaria. So this is the chandelier. This looks like some kind of antiquated clock. This one shown here is a half moon. I'm not super familiar with lunar cycles, so if this isn't a half moon and is something else, I do apologize, but just to me, with zero knowledge, it looks like a half moon. And then finally down here we have the inverted statue, which we can use to invert the Carrion study hall to access some previously inaccessible areas. Next we have this great page of our tarnished making our way up towards this hill with all of these tall stone towers. I believe that there's a few portals around them. I'm not quite sure exactly which portal leads where, but I am fairly certain that one of them is locked by a stone sword key. So next we have our tarnished here on the left, and I actually can't really make out what it is because it's so dark. It looks like this is the corpse of Godwin the Golden, or his face, the Prince of Death. However, I am not sure. The page is so dark I can like barely see it. I'm only assuming that it's Godwin after taking a flashlight to the book, but I may be wrong. But and if you know what this is, please do let me know in the comments, but I do think it's Godwin. Next, we have some interior of Rhea Lucaria. So this is after you get your glintstone key and enter the blocked gateway and actually gain entrance to the academy. This is one of the first areas that you visit, kind of the outskirts of the academy. And the architecture is absolutely gorgeous. It's very like gothic in style, very dark, moody, atmospheric. It reminds me a lot of Irithyll from Dark Souls 3. But you can see like there's towers and there's walkways and stuff. Yeah, really cool. Next is a bridge, assuming again in Rhea Lucaria. We see a tarnished here, and there are a bunch of things strewn up in sacks. Now, it's not obvious that they're bodies, but let's just be honest, they're bodies. And then up here is the door that we are meant to go through. And there's this little thing down here showing what these things actually are. And there's something heavy that is, humanoid shaped, wrapped in cloth. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it's a body. Next, we have some more architecture. So over here, we have this kind of cathedral looking building with this walkway going up into this courtyard of yet another building. And then over here is just some magical symbol. I'm not exactly sure which symbol this is, but things like this are prevalent in Rhea Lucaria. And I forgot to say, but you can see the arches at the top here. Let me zoom in. You can see these arches are very reminiscent of Anor Londo from Dark Souls 1. So next we have our tarnished here. This is very difficult to see, but that's our tarnished there with a lamp walking towards what looks to be some kind of waterfall. This is again still on the exterior of the academy. And then over here on the right side, we have the Stargazer's altar, which we find star fragments at, which are a mana thing. And since the Carians kind of got their start as astrologers, and because they founded Rhea Lucaria, makes sense for one of these to be here. Okay, so this is now inside the academy properly. So these are some of the corridors, if you can even make it out, because I can barely see it. But this is the staircase leading up with like this red mat leading up the stairs. Really good area. It's one of my favorite legacy dungeons in Elden Ring. Next, this is the room where we fight the boss Red Wolf of Radagon. So you can see that there's candles everywhere. And as you know, Radagon was married to Rennala, the Queen of Caria and the head of Rhea Lucaria. However, Radagon then left Rennala for America. But for some reason, he left his dog with his ex-wife, which is a very strange move, even by normal standards, let alone Lands Between standards. You can't see them in this picture, but this room also has pictures of most of the accomplished sorcerers with their own conspectuses, and there is supposedly one of Selen in here. But there is definitely one of Rennala in here, as well as multiple other grandmasters of the academy. So here we have one of the globes that we can interact with. that spins around. These are the photos of all of the sorcerers, or all of the grandmasters. So let me zoom in on each and every one of them. Now, I'm not sure on all of their names. I'm actually not sure on most of their names, but I will still show you nonetheless. So these guys have all started their own conspectus. Conspectus meaning like their own branch of study, and have then become masters at it. So there is Renala. This is obviously before Radagon left her. But beside her, this supposedly is Selen. It's never said, or it's never been made official, but people have just guessed that based on the age and also the likeness of the woman in the picture and the stone mask that Selen wears, that more than likely this is Selen, which I think is cool. And it's also interesting that she got kicked out for being a quote-unquote witch, but at the same time, at one point, she was well respected enough to have her portrait hung in the main hall. Next, I don't know these guys' names, but these guys are like the twin mages. If you've played Elden Ring and you have come across the helmet that is the Rhea Lucaria stone mask with the glintstone at the top of the head, the one that has the two faces on it is based on these guys. So all of the masters of the conspectuses get their own stone head mask, but because these guys were twins, they just made one mask with two faces, which is either really creative or really lazy on the stonemason's part. I'll leave that up to you guys. And then here are just some more images of Rhea Lucaria. Just thought that it was important to actually show you all of them. Anyway, then let's continue. Okay, so on the... sorry, let me just zoom in real quick. So on the left page here, we see the area directly after the room where the portraits are. And this is the path that takes us to the boss of Rhea Lucaria, Queen Renala herself. This is our tarnished right here, in case you can't see him. And over here on this page, this is Renala's chambers. So she, despite being the head and founder of Rhea Lucaria, the other sorcerers took her captive after Radagon left her and declared war on Caria, as I mentioned in part 1. So they just keep her in this chamber all day, and this is where we fight her. This is where we encounter all of her children that she keeps rebirthing with Radagon's egg, which is really, really sad if you actually think about it. But yeah, for as far as boss arenas go, it's not the best, but it is very atmospheric in the room. But maybe that's just because I like Rhea Lucaria. So next up we have Caelid. I don't read kanji, but I do know after playing Elden Ring in Japanese that this is Caelid. Now, one quick little bit of information which I just find very, very interesting about Caelid is Caelid translates from Welsh to inflamed land or land in flames, which has a double meaning in this case, because one, Caelid is full of fire, and it is very much a land in flame, but also inflamed land, meaning inflamed in terms of inflammation, which is tied to diseases, which makes sense based on how Caelid has been corrupted by the Scarlet Aeonia. So it's just another one of those great details that we see in From Software games. And Elden Ring is really the pinnacle of this, in my opinion. So we start off with just a broad landscape of Caelid here. And let me just zoom in. And then down on the bottom here, we can see some more of the Caelid landscape. However, we can see some of the Scarlet Aeonia blooms
in the corners and environments here. So this is just kind of the introduction to this area. What is interesting though is in both of these pictures, the sky is either gray or black, whereas in the game, the sky is red. So I'm wondering why they chose to not include the red sky, because that's kind of Caelid's signature look. So next up, we have some more of the Caelid landscape. We can see some of the towers over here and over here. You can also see some of the ground and just the absolute disarray that Caelid is in. And over here, it looks like there is some kind of carriage of some sort. I'm not exactly sure where in Caelid this is, but yeah, still very interesting nonetheless. Okay, so here this looks like the Bestial Sanctum at the very end of Caelid. This is where we find the beast clergyman Grenk, aka Malakath, and this is where we can go and feed him Deathroot. This is the walkway up to the castle, or the stronghold, and then the door is here. I really like this building. It also kind of looks maybe, not the top part, but down here, I'll zoom in a little bit. It looks a little bit more like the Divine Tower, but based on this piece up here, I believe this is the Bestial Sanctum. If I am wrong, I apologize, and please do correct me in the comments because I want to know if I ever make a mistake. So here is Redmane Castle. Let me just zoom in so you guys can see it. So this is General Radahn's castle in Caelid, and we can see our Tarnished here. And this is the bridge that we have to cross to get to it. During the game, you are assaulted with catapults, and people are shooting arrows at you the entire way through. But yeah, this is his castle, and then this is a little bit to the side. Redmane Castle is, I think, a really cool area, especially during the Festival of Radahn. There's lots of weapons and corpses strung up from the Shattering, and this is also where we first encounter Jeren, who is the host of the festival. Really cool area. Definitely the highlight of Caelid, in my opinion, or one of them at least. Definitely the most important in terms of story. But yeah, let's continue. So here we have some pictures of the Caelid coast. You can see that there are some shipwrecks over on the side, lots of spears in the sand, and this looks like where we go through or go to enter the gate to be teleported to the Radahn boss fight. Really cool area. Also, the Radahn boss fight has been severely nerfed. I played Elden Ring on day one before any of the patches, and as tough as the fight was, it was absolutely incredible. But now I feel like he's nerfed so much that it kind of takes away from it. You know, he's supposed to be the mightiest general and soldier of all the demigods, and they just kind of nerfed him into the dirt, which I don't really feel is fitting for his character, but that's just my personal opinion. And of course, we see our Tarnished here. So, that looks like it's the end of Caelid. That was actually surprisingly short. So next up, we have the Altus Plateau. And I know I said that I don't read Japanese, however, I know the kanji for the different areas in the game, just based on doing another playthrough of the game before recording this in Japanese. The Altus Plateau is our first mid-game area after activating our first Grand Lift, And this area is much more beautiful, or not much more beautiful, but definitely beautiful in a different way between, or compared to areas such as Liurnia. It's a lot more golden, it's a lot more vibrant, lots of golden colors, lots of autumn colors. And yeah, so we can see here in this picture that there are a lot of spectral banners, such as over here and over here. These are obviously remnants left over from the shattering. And also down here, let me zoom in so you guys can see. Down here is our tarnished. I'm doing my best to point out the tarnished in every single photo. It's kind of like a Where's Waldo for me, but I like how they include them in the picture, just kind of showing that the tarnished is going on a journey and going through all of these areas. So here we can see what I think is the first grand lift that we activate to access the Altus Plateau. I apologize, a plane just flew overhead. So obviously we hoist the medallion and the lift brings us up. This is the main way to access the Altus Plateau, but there is another way which involves kind of scaling scaffolding all the way up to the top. And that's how characters like Millicent made their way up. And then over here we have some of the statues at the Grand Lift. They are stone statues, but they turn once you hoist the medallion. Really, really cool. So next we have what the kanji says is the ancient archaeological cliffs. And let me just try and get the glare out of the way. So it is a very, very dark image, and that we can see that the size of the pillars and structures are just massive. You know, here is our tarnished down here, and it just puts in perspective how tall and massive these things are. So this looks like maybe the alternate way up to the Altus Plateau rather than an area actually located in it, but again, I could be wrong. So here is a beautiful double spread. So this is our first path after reaching the Altus Plateau, after exiting the Grand Lift. So this is after we kind of get on the road for the first time, and whether we talk to or ignore Raya, who was at the top of the lift, this is the path that we take. And this picture just shows the color scheme that I was talking about for the Altus Plateau. So you see that there's lots of golds, lots of autumn colors, and all of these pillars along with a road. The road is not in the best condition, but it is interesting that as you get closer and closer to the capital, that the roads start to become more prominent. And then over here we have a picture of a statue, a pillar with a little statue on the top that kind of are on either side of the pathways. Here is a great image of the plains of the plateau. So you can see that it is just full of grass. There is some structures in the background here. You can see our tarnished here. Over here is the windmill. So this would be the windmill village, I am assuming. And yeah, it is just a great little area. I believe this is some castle here. I'm not sure which castle this is exactly, but and you can see that there's some more pillars here, and there's the road leading up from here all the way up there. And again, there's our tarnished. So this is after we have gone through the plains and entered kind of the first entrance to, or the first walkway up to the capital. And it shows the majesty of this area with the steps, the paved roads, and the massive, massive statues You can see there's one here and one here, both of which have riders on horses. And then down here, we can actually have a closer look at what these statues are. So you see the mounted statues, which have a knight of the Erd tree with a halberd. And then we also have this knight who is just on foot, but really, really cool. I really like the architecture in this area. I know Elden Ring has a lot of great architecture, but this area in particular is one of my favorites. So this is the battlefield, or one of the battlefields that we can encounter leading up to the capital. You can see the capital walls here in the background. So this is part of the battle that got close to the capital itself, and you can just see the remains of a bunch of different aspects of the war. So you can see that there's trenches, you can see that there's barricades here, there is what looks like trebuchets or catapults here, there is a banner, and my personal favorite, these massive spears that were hurled into the battlefield. Now these were not intended as weapons, these were designed by the perfumers, which the substance would be emitted from here, and this would buff the enemy, buff the friendly soldiers in the battlefield, giving them more bravery, more confidence, essentially making them or giving them enough drugs to get all other thoughts out of their system. And they're also used at firing at the enemy to induce the opposite effect, you know, making them more fearful, more anxious, and stuff like that. I really love this aspect of Elden Ring and the Shattering, that it's not just, you know, swords and blades and cavalry, but they actually use, you know, scientific methods in their war tactics as well. Really cool area, and it just goes to show that even as pretty as this area is, that it is not unaffected and unscarred by the war.
However, guys, that is going to be it for this episode of the Elden Ring official artbook showcase. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed making it. As always, your viewership means the absolute world to me. So my name has been Crimson, and thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good evening.